On September 24, 2018, headlines across Canada exploded with one of the most shocking revelations in recent memory.
He's a monster, and he thinks he's above all of us in a way.
A wealthy heir, worth millions, was arrested for the murder of his own father.
Breaking news comes out of Toronto, where a judge has handed Dylan Millard a third consecutive life sentence. It is for the murder of his father, Wayne Millard.
Some claimed it was part of a larger conspiracy involving greedy corporations, while others saw something far darker: the cold, calculating eyes of a man many now see as an unforgettable villain. But what really went down?
But the Crown is calling Millard amoral, dangerous, and someone who hasn't shown an ounce of regret.
Before we inch any further, welcome back to my channel. I know I'm not sitting on 100 subs yet, but every single like, comment, and share genuinely keeps me motivated. So thanks for being here.
Breaking news comes out of Toronto, where a judge has handed Dylan Millard a third consecutive life sentence. It is for the murder of his father, Wayne Millard. The 33-year-old is already serving time for killing his former girlfriend, Laura Babcock, also for killing a man he had just met, Tim Bosma.
Today, we're diving into the twisted case of Dylan Millard, a name that's become synonymous with betrayal, greed, and murder. Millard wasn't just your average criminal. He was a Canadian heir, born into wealth through a family-run aviation business. But instead of flying high with success, he took a far darker route, one that left 3 people dead and an entire nation stunned. Let's start with the crime that caught everyone's attention. On May 6th, 2013, Dylan Millard and his friend-turned-accomplice, Mark Smitch, arranged a fake test drive with 32-year-old Tim Bosma. Bosma had listed his truck for sale online, just like many of us do. He thought he was meeting potential buyers. Instead, he never came home. During that so-called test drive, Bosma was shot and killed. But that wasn't the beginning of Millard's violent streak. Investigators, while digging into the Bosma case, uncovered even more chilling evidence. In July 2012, just months earlier, 23-year-old Laura Babcock had vanished without a trace. She had been caught in a messy love triangle involving Millard and his then-girlfriend. Authorities later pieced together that Millard and Smitch had also murdered Babcock and had destroyed her body. Now, if those 2 murders weren't shocking enough, Millard's darkest betrayal was yet to be revealed. Back in November 2012, his father, Wayne Millard, was found dead in his home. The case was initially closed as a suicide. After all, there was a gunshot wound to the head and no signs of forced entry. But something didn't sit right. And once Dylan was arrested for Bosma and Babcock's deaths, police took another look at Wayne Millard's mysterious death. Now, today's video is all about what happened when Millard was finally brought in for questioning. How did he react? Did he play it cool or crack under pressure? We're going to break it all down, piece by piece.
We're here with respect to an incident that actually happened yesterday, Thursday, November 29th, 2012, at, I believe, your home at 5 Maple Gate. Yes. In Etobicoke. And what I'd like you to do is just start from the beginning as to what happened and that brought the police into this incident.
And so Thursday, sometime between 6 and 6:30, I got back to the house. I had been working at our family business in Waterloo. I came in through the side door. That's the door most everybody uses in the house. And I opened up the next door, which leads to the cat area of the house. It's the door from the kitchen to the hallway. And then my dog Pedo was waiting for me there. And I walked down the hallway, and I walked to my room, and I picked a sweater out of the closet. It had been a cold day. And then I was on my way back to the kitchen to make a snack, and I noticed that my father seemed to still be asleep in bed, which was odd because it was late in the afternoon.
As Dylan begins to speak with detectives, he describes his arrival at his father's house after a day of work. The way he casually mentions discovering his father's lifeless body despite the obvious horror of the situation, gives a glimpse into his unsettling demeanor.
And so I poked my head in, and something didn't really seem right about the way he was laying. He was laying very stilly. And then I walked into the room, and I saw blood on the pillow. And for a moment I had to leave the room. I actually went back to my room, and I got out my phone, and I walked back into my dad's room, and I called my mother, and I told her what I was seeing. I literally said, I'm standing in my dad's room.
Millard recounts walking into his father's room, finding him in an odd position, and noticing blood on his pillow. What follows is a strange conversation with his mother, as he explains to her the grim reality of what he's just discovered.
And there's blood all over his pillow, and he's dead. And at first, she thought I actually meant my dog Pedo, because she kept asking about his dog bed. I said, no, not the dog bed, his bed's pillow. She said, well, Pedo's not dead, who's dead? I said, my dad. And she just started screaming on the phone. And
Where were you in Waterloo?
Waterloo Kitchener International Airport. We built a hangar there, a large one. And there was all kinds of mechanics.
In this segment, we learn more about Millard's background. Growing up in immense wealth and success, his family had ties to aviation, giving him a comfortable life. But there are hints of a much darker side, as Dellen's actions begin to raise suspicions.
Okay, so you work for the family business?
Yes, I do.
The family business is?
It's Millionaire, Incorporated, and it's right now being trying to be reimagined into an MRO, which is a maintenance and repair organization. And it's essentially a garage to bring airplanes, get them fixed. And a couple of years ago, we were a hangarage business on Toronto Airport. We rent hangar space to companies. And now we're...
As Dellen continues his statement, he shares details about his family business, Millionaire. It's clear that he is deeply involved in the company, but his description of the business struggles adds a layer of tension, as we wonder how this might play into his actions.
And how's that going as far as the new hangar and everything in Kitchener?
It's going. It's stressful. It's been about a year and a half of very hard work for everyone involved, and we haven't got a contract yet. So
Okay. And when did you go to Kitchener?
got there after 11:30, but probably before 12:30, somewhere in there, right around lunchtime.
Detectives press him on his whereabouts the day before the murder, trying to establish a timeline. Dellen seems to have a clear but oddly calm recollection of his movements, as he places himself in various locations, including a stop in Oakville before heading home.
When did you leave Kitchener?
To come back?
Yeah.
To Etobicoke? I don't know. I'm just backwards engineering the hours. If I got home around 6 to 6:30, I would have left Kitchener probably about 4:30, because I stopped in Oakville. I have a friend that comes with me to work, and I was dropping him off at home.
Did you stay at the house Wednesday night?
Mark's house, yeah.
Oh. Is that Mark your friend?
Yeah.
While the detectives dig into his past, Dellen gives us more insight into his relationships. Mark Smith, a longtime friend, is mentioned, and we start to see how Dellen's personal life may have contributed to his troubled state of mind.
That's in Oakville?
That's in Oakville. I've pick him up, I drop him off. Sometimes I sleep over. And he comes to work with me tomorrow.
And Mark's last name?
Smitch. S-M-I-C-H.
As the detectives push further, we hear about Dellen's increasingly reckless behavior. He and Mark Smith had been involved in petty thefts and other misdeeds, making us question whether this was just the beginning of a more sinister pattern of actions.
Now, your main residence is at 5 Maplegate?
Officially, it's 307 Riverside. I have an apartment in that building, but I've torn it all apart for renovations. So for the last year, I've lived at Maplegate with my dad.
The plot thickens as Dellen is asked about his living arrangements. While he claims to have lived at Maplegate for the past year with his father, the detectives begin to see inconsistencies in his statements, leading them to wonder if there's more to his story than meets the eye.
So, do you live full-time at your dad's house right now?
Right now, yeah.
So is Riverside, is it livable in right now, or is it?
The apartment?
Yeah.
I don't need that many amenities, so yeah, it's livable, but the washrooms aren't. The toilet works. The washrooms aren't hooked up. The walls have just started to be painted. It's getting close.
He talks about his living situation, including his apartment and the renovations that are still underway. Despite the ongoing construction, Dellen seems oddly comfortable with the less-than-ideal conditions.
Now, your dad's health. Can you tell me how his health was?
Well, he threw out his back. It's been a while now. 9 months ago, between 7 and 9 months ago. And that really, really restricted his mobility. He was bedridden for 2 or 3 months. And then recently he's been able to drive himself out to Waterloo. And he has an electric scooter there. He goes around the hangaround.
Dellen gives us more insight into his father's health, revealing that Wayne Millard had been suffering from a back injury that limited his mobility. But despite this, he still managed to get around and even drive himself to work. Dellen's nonchalant tone about his father's declining health raises some concerns.
Does he have trouble getting around in the house?
Trouble as though he can't do it smoothly, or couldn't do it smoothly. It was awkward for him to walk, but he would go around the house no problem.
Okay. Any other medical problems?
It's a medical problem.
Heart, liver, lungs.
Strong heart, very strong liver. Have to be.
Pardon me?
I said it'd have to be.
Why?
He's always liked alcohol.
The conversation turns to Wayne's drinking habits, with Dellen explaining that his father was a regular drinker. But there's something chilling about how casually he talks about the addiction, almost as if it's an afterthought rather than something that might have played a role in his father's struggles.
He's always drank lots. And you have to have a strong liver.
Now, was your dad a big drinker, or a regular drinker, or an alcoholic? How would you describe it?
I don't like to say the word alcoholic, but it fits. He was a regular drinker, like every night. And more than I could drink. But was also a regular non-drinker. During the mornings and the days, he wouldn't drink at all. It was always just late at night.
Your dad, did he have any guns in the house?
In the past, he has definitely. The safe that the detectives and officers have seen tonight, he's had that safe as long as I can remember. And he's opened it in front of me maybe 3 times in my life.
As the interrogation continues, Dellen reveals more about his family's wealth and background. He speaks about his father's aviation business and the family's success, but there's a noticeable detachment in his voice. Despite the privilege, his actions suggest a much darker reality behind the luxury.
Did anyone else ever stay over in the house besides you? Like anyone else ever sleep over in that house?
Sometimes Mark would sleep over at my house. And then we'd just go straight to Waterloo from there. Not recently in the last maybe 3 months, but before that, sometimes I would have parties and people would have had too much to drive, so they'd just sleep over in the basement. That was never regular. That was sort of on just a case-by-case type of thing.
What's the whole basement set up for downstairs?
For parties.
For parties?
Yeah. Tried to make it look like a club.
We hear more about the Millard family home, including the basement where Dellen threw parties. He describes it as a club that he decorated himself, adding a chilling layer to the picture of his lifestyle. But it's what happens behind these closed doors that's far more disturbing.
I did the interior design stuff for it. And the paint colors and wallpaper.
And how often would you have parties?
This year I've had 2.
Would you advertise them? Or?
No. No, just friends of friends.
Have the police ever attended there for any of these parties?
I think a couple years back we had one get out of control. And we had to call the police to get people off the property.
The tone shifts as Dellen talks about a party that got out of control a couple of years ago. The police were called to handle the chaos, which hints at a history of trouble that Dellen might have been hiding from everyone, including the police.
Doors in the house, are they usually always locked?
Yeah. Different doors have different habits. The front door is always deadbolted from the inside. The side door is a combination that locks as soon as you close it. My dad's usually pretty good about going around the house at night to make sure we have wooden stoppers in the sliding doors that lead to the back.
Okay. Your dad's sliding door wasn't locked, and there was no wooden stopper in there, and the screen wasn't locked. Is that?
That's not unusual recently. He's been smoking a lot in the house recently.
Smoking in the house, or?
Yeah. He didn't used to do that a few years ago, but now he does, now he did, and he just opened the door.
Dellen talks about the house's security, mentioning that the front door was always locked and the sliding door had a wooden stopper. But when questioned about his father's bedroom door, he admits that it wasn't locked, which raises suspicions about the unusual circumstances surrounding Wayne's death.
Okay, was your dad depressed at all?
He had depression in him. He carried some great sadness with him throughout life that I never really knew exactly what it was. He never really wanted to share it with me.
Was there a chance the business was going to fail? And
yeah, that chance is more than a chance.
is it still a chance, or?
Oh yeah.
As the interrogation deepens, we hear about Dellen's father's possible depression and the stress surrounding their new business venture. Dellen acknowledges that the business could fail, adding a layer of financial tension to an already complicated situation. Was this a breaking point for his father?
Okay, and how soluble is your dad if the business fails?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
followed, like, based on the fact that it was your grandfather's Millionaire company, a big transportation company, sold his hangars in Toronto.
Yeah.
The house and some of his possessions, your dad had amassed a certain amount of wealth and looked like he was pretty successful. So if this business, this new endeavor, doesn't fly or it takes a longer time to get off, is your dad going to go bankrupt? Or
Yeah, everything that we have is in this business, including loans on the house, and including a large loan from RBC Bank for the business itself.
Finally, Dellen admits that if the business venture failed, their family could go bankrupt. This financial pressure seems to have been weighing heavily on Wayne Millard. Now we start to see the mounting pressure as police begin to piece together evidence from multiple murders. The investigation into Tim Bosma's disappearance intensifies as details about Dellen's involvement surface and his connections to other suspicious cases come to light.
so how long did your dad think that it should, like, the year and a half that it took to get to this point to get the license, was that longer than it should have been?
We originally projected 9 months, and it became a year. And we thought that as soon as we had the license, contracts would be coming in steadily and easily. We haven't got a contract yet. It hasn't been that long.
The police uncover more unsettling evidence, including phone records linking Dellen and his accomplice, Mark Smith, to several suspicious activities leading up to Bosma's death. As they close in on the killers, Dellen's calm demeanor begins to stand in stark contrast to the gravity of his crimes.
Yeah, it's a small number of players, but the competition is fierce between them.
Does your dad own other properties?
Just gotta own something else. He owns Maple Gate.
Sorry?
The house we were at.
Yeah.
The hangar. I own Riverside, which is the sixplex.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think he owns any other properties right now.
A vacation property or anything like that? A cottage?
No, yeah, he got property when his father died. He got his house and a vacation home out in Picton, and they were both sold.
As the investigation moves forward, more disturbing revelations come to light. Dellen's interactions with his former lover, Laura Babcock, are examined. The detectives start to connect the dots between Dellen's troubled relationships and his involvement in the deaths of multiple victims.
I am.
Your dad was a pilot, right?
Yes, he was.
What pilot license? Are you a helicopter pilot?
Yeah, I'm a helicopter pilot, and I have that at the private license level, which is, do you know the different levels?
No.
There's one that's just, I forget the name of it, it's just for you and your friends. Then there's the private one, which would be for you and multiple friends, like up to 8 people, I think. And then there's the commercial level where you're working for a company and, I don't know, maybe you're flying tours somewhere, flying executives to an oil rig. That's the commercial one.
So you're good up to 8 people then?
I'm good up to 8 people, yeah.
It becomes evident that Dellen Millard's life was a dangerous mix of privilege and dysfunction. The interrogation uncovers his involvement in multiple murders, including the death of his father, Wayne. Dellen's attempts to maintain his innocence seem increasingly unconvincing as more evidence is brought to light.
You have a housekeeper?
Yes.
Her name?
Her name is Dina.
How often does Dina come?
Usually twice a day.
What time of the day would she come?
She would come late morning, say between 9 and 10 would be the first time she'd come. And then she'd probably come again around 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, was that Dina that pulled up when I was talking to you and your mom today?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, and that was a little bit later. That was like
I don't know what time.
That was like 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, we'd already been there.
After 9:30. And had she been there earlier in the day, do you know?
I noticed that his dinner was served on his desk, so she was probably there around 5.
The investigation takes another turn as the police reveal how Dellen's home and personal life were entangled in the web of his criminal actions. From strange details about the housekeeper's visits to the eerie behavior surrounding the family's wealth, the full scope of Dellen's dark world begins to emerge.
Do you have signing authority for the business? How about any of his personal affairs?
Signing authority?
Yeah, like joint on the house or...
There's one account that we're joint on. I've never actually used it though.
It was like an in-case count, in case something like this happened, and then you would have access to it.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know what his thinking was. He was big on setting that up.
Okay.
He made a big deal about it.
As Dellen is confronted with the details of his crimes, he remains eerily composed. The detectives push further, leading Dellen to reveal more about his family's wealth, his access to finances, and how he might have benefited from his father's estate. But no amount of wealth can escape the consequences of his actions.
Time is now 2:18 a.m. It's still Friday, November 30th, 2012, and I'm ending this interview. Actually, before I end it, is there anything that you want to tell us that we might have forgotten to ask you, or anything that you remembered that you think that we should know? Any little detail that you think might be able to help us?
I don't know if anything we've talked about has been helpful or not.
After hours of interrogation, the detectives wrap up the questioning. Dellen's final response to their questions seems resigned, as if he's given up trying to explain himself. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's only a matter of time before the full weight of his crimes catches up to him. Dellen Millard's conviction for 3 counts of first-degree murder brings an end to the terrifying story.
I'm Omen Qureshi at the University Avenue Courthouse, where 3-time convicted killer Dellen Millard was back in court, this time for sentencing submissions for the murder of his father. Millard is already serving back-to-back life sentences for killing Tim Bosma and Laura Babcock, which wouldn't make him eligible for parole until 2063, at which point he'll be 77 years old. But the Crown thinks an extra 25 years should be tacked on for the killing of his father, which wouldn't make him eligible for parole until 2088, at which point he'll be 102. Now, the defense says that essentially guarantees he'll die in jail and eradicates any incentive for rehabilitation. But the Crown is calling Millard amoral, dangerous, and someone who hasn't shown an ounce of regret.
December 18th, 2018, Millard was sentenced to a 3rd consecutive life term without the possibility of parole for 25 years, totaling 75 years before eligibility. However, a 2022 Supreme Court ruling deemed consecutive parole ineligibility periods unconstitutional, reducing his parole ineligibility to 25 years.
So Mr. Millard has been convicted of 2 prior murders. He's serving a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years on 2 cases, served consecutively. We're going to be seeking another life sentence with consecutive parole ineligibility on top of that.
Consequently, Millard will be eligible for parole in 2043.
This has been another emotional day for many people. It's been proven that not only have the Bosmas and ourselves lost a loved one, the Millard family must live with the fact that this heinous individual murdered his own father. We feel for Wayne's relatives, save for one. It has been a difficult ordeal to attend this trial. Every day, Linda relived the horror of Laura's murder trial. But she had to be there to represent all of his victims. She wanted to make sure that Wayne always had someone present in the court who cared about him and the results of the trial. No one in civilized society should ever have to face Dellen Millard or, although he was not directly involved in this murder, Mark Smich again. We believe that everyone knew he was guilty of more than 2 murders when it was revealed in Laura's trial that in a letter to Della Millard, Christina Nootka lovingly stated, "My sweet serial killer." We feel sorry for Millard, Smich, and Nootka families, for they'll have to live with the shame and disgust of what their children have done or incited.